Hello, my name is Jimmy Aguirre, and today we're going to talk about Pro Tools. Pro Tools is a digital audio workstation. On the agenda for this video, I'd like to first talk about what is Pro Tools. Then I'd like to talk about some of the features of Pro Tools. And for each of the features, I would like to talk about the usage, some of the benefits, and some of the drawbacks of each of these features. And finally, I'd like to give a demo of each of the features so that you can get an idea of the workflow within Pro Tools. So what is Pro Tools? As I stated earlier, Pro Tools is a digital audio workstation. Pro Tools is used primarily to record, mix, and edit audio. Pro Tools consists of multiple components, specifically an audio interface or an I/O interface. The audio interface is responsible for converting analog signals into digital signals. These digital signals can then be displayed on visual monitors, and an engineer or an artist can manipulate these audio waveforms, and the computer can then, of course, process these manipulations. After the processing is complete, the digital signal is sent back to the audio interface, and this signal is then converted back into an analog signal, which can then be routed to studio monitors or headphones. Now let's recap. Pro Tools consists of both hardware and software components. The hardware component consists of an audio I/O interface. The audio I/O is compatible with both line level signals and mic level signals, and often has a discrete headphone amp as well. The hardware interface is responsible for converting analog signals into digital signals, as well as converting those digital signals back into analog signals. And often the hardware has meters, so that way the engineer or the artist can monitor the signal coming in and the signal going out of the interface. The software is the digital audio workstation. This is where all the magic happens. And the software consists of primarily a graphical user interface. The GUI is used for the artist or the engineer so that they can manipulate the audio with the click of a mouse or by typing on the keyboard. The software also enables the artist or the engineer to multi-track record and to play back multiple tracks at the same time. You're able to edit audio as well as mix audio, and also you're able to process a large amount of signals in a very small package. And finally, nearly all of the parameters within Pro Tools can be automated. One benefit of Pro Tools is the ability to multi-track record. And you're able to multi-track record without the need for an expensive large console, such as the SSL or the Neve consoles. While these consoles sound very, very good, they cost a lot of money. Sometimes 100, 200, 300, 400 plus $1,000. They sound great, but they're huge, and not everyone can afford them, and a lot of times artists can't afford them as well. Um, Also, when you have these large consoles, you also have to record the audio to something. Now, whether it be magnetic tape, 2-inch tape, or say like ADAT drives, um, this media takes up space. And can you imagine having a huge catalog of songs? Where do you put all this tape? It's kind of, you know, it'll kind of fill up a warehouse after a while. It sounds great, but with technology, we should have a better way. So with Pro Tools, you're able to store tons of songs onto hard drives that are very tiny, or even in the cloud. So you reduce the footprint, as well as it's much more cheap to run and maintain. With a huge, say, Neve or SSL console, you have tons of tubes, tons of circuits. The electricity bill is going to be through the roof. You have to maintain this hardware, whereas if you have a software um, solution, it's a lot less maintenance. Now I'd like to give a quick demonstration of what it looks like for multi-track recording and mixing. Specifically multi-track mixing. The recording has already been done. This is a artists I recorded some time back, but you can see kind of the concept of what is going on here. Um, Basically, you have a backing track. This is a hip hop track, so you have a backing track, and then typically what you do is you'll go through and record one vocal track, and then what you'll do is you'll go back to the exact same position that you were previously and record another layer of vocal track over that. And you do that a number of times until you kind of build this layered vocal that will end up, you know, being the song. So let me play this, and I'll kind of run through um, what is going on here. So it starts off, you've got just the backing track. No vocals have been recorded, but typically what would happen is I would record, and you would basically say I would record the very first vocal track, and here they come in here. And so you record one vocal take, and then what you would do is you just go back to where you were and record a separate vocal take. Now right here is a good demonstration of multi-track mixing, because as you can see, I don't know if you can see the meters there, but all these tracks are playing at the same time, so all these signals have to be routed into a stereo signal that can then be burned to a CD or something like that. So, and then you interweave different vocals and different layers of vocals. But this is one of the most powerful features of Pro Tools, that you're able to record so many tracks. And here you can see the mixing window, so you can see all these signals are actually playing at the exact same time. And this is all within software. So whereas you would have this huge SSL console, and your tape machine that's limited to 24 tracks, or maybe you have an 8 track or a 16 track, but you're limited on your track count. With Pro Tools, you're literally limited by the processor of your computer, so you can run as many tracks as your computer can handle. And there's ways and tricks around getting into even more tracks than your computer can handle. So that's one of the greatest things about Pro Tools. Next, I'd like to talk about audio editing. Now, this is one of the greatest features of Pro Tools as well. There's so many great features of Pro Tools, but audio editing is probably one of the best features. So you can record audio, and back in the old recording studios, say you had a track that was slightly ahead of tempo from where it should be. So what you would have to do is you'd literally have to take your 2-inch tape or whatever type of tape you had, and you'd have to take a razor blade, and you'd have to cut it at a 45-degree angle, and then you'd have to hopefully cut it in the right spot, and then you'd have to literally move the tape over and tape it in place. And then what you'd have to do is you'd have to scrub the tape and play it back and check to make sure there's no cracks or any pops, and you'd have to make sure that it worked fine. If it didn't work fine, then you have to pull the entire 2-inch tape reel off again, and then cut it, tape it, put it back, and then try again. And what happens if you overcut? Then you're in big trouble. So you're gonna have to do some pretty creative things to make the client that's paying you $50 an hour or more to not punch you. So audio editing is definitely one of the best things about Pro Tools. Next, I'm going to show you kind of a demo of how easy it is to edit audio within Pro Tools versus taking an X-Acto knife or a razor blade and being forced to physically cut the tape and then tape it. So let me show you that. So now I'd like to demonstrate audio editing. Like I said before, if you needed to do an audio edit in traditional studios, you'd have to many times pull off the tape deck, or pull off the spool of tape off the tape deck, and then you'd have to locate the exact position where you need to make the edit, and then you'd have to physically cut it, and then you'd have to tape it back together and then test to make sure that the edit was done properly. If it wasn't, you'd have to go back and try all over again. So within Pro Tools, it's so much easier. It's literally just a point, click, cut, and then apply your edits. And I'm going to show you another demonstration. I believe this is the same artist. This is going to be over the bridge section, and we're just going to do some cutting just to see how easy it is when compared to physically cutting magnetic tape. So here we have the same song, and now we're over the bridge section. And so if you want to cut audio, literally you just have to take the cursor and place it in the section where you would like to cut it. So perhaps for this song, I would like to cut the audio right after the, right before the bridge. So I'll place my cursor right here, and you'll see the cursor start to blink there. And where it's blinking now, I can just cut it. And see there I have two separate audio signals, or two separate audio files there. And what I can do is then peel back that audio file, which basically just cuts that whole thing out. And I'm going to fade it in and fade it out over here. And then we'll play it back and see what it sounds like. And so it's just as simple as that. You just literally put your cursor where you want it, and you can cut the audio versus taking out an X-Acto knife and a splicing block and cutting tape and taping it back. It's much, much more easier. Now perhaps I wanted to, add some type of a dramatic effect here right before the bridge comes. So say I want to add a bunch of kick drums right before the exit. So all I would really need to do is select the kick drum where I want. And now you can just do like with a word, just like a word processor, where you can cut and paste. So I'm literally going to cut and paste that kick drum part there 4 times, and then I'm going to peel back the audio again and see what that sounds like. And this is how easy the editing process is within Pro Tools. If you try to do some type of a edit like this with tape, I don't think it would be possible unless, I just don't think it'd be possible because you can't take the same piece of tape and multiply it over a bunch of parts. But there you go. So maybe it was too much, so now I'm going to peel it back again and try it out again. This is how easy it is for editing audio. Okay, so I didn't like that, so I'm going to bring back what I just took off and then maybe try and fade it in a little bit better. And we'll zoom in here. Now this is another great feature when you're editing is you can actually zoom in on the waveforms. So I had it a second ago where I was pretty far out, but now I can zoom in and kind of dial in almost with microscopic precision on the waveform and locate an exact position where I want to fade in to audio tracks, or if I want to eliminate a noise, a click, or a pop, or some type of unwanted sound, I can literally go in and find that exact transient where that noise occurs and just pull it out, edit it, and any number of things I can do as far as editing within Pro Tools. So here I am crossfading, and now I'm going to play it back and see what the result comes out to be. So editing within Pro Tools is as easy as that. Finally, I'd like to talk about signal processing within Pro Tools. Traditionally, in a recording studio, you would have a large amount of outboard gear that would be very expensive, and you would need, pretty much you need 2 of everything. And when I talk about expensive, typically like the Teletronics LA2A, that piece of equipment right there is about $3,800, $4,000, something like that. And you need 2 of everything because you need to record in stereo. So just with 2 pieces of equipment in a professional recording studio, you're looking at $8,000. So, and the best studios have multiple outboard gear that cost at least $4,000 or more. So this can be a very, very expensive business. So, and also on top of that, as you can see the picture on the bottom right, is you have what's called a patch bay. So the patch bay is literally a bunch of tiny cables that enable you to connect the outboard gear to the console so that way you can record it. So say you have a vocal track, you want to compress that vocal track with the Teletronics LA2A, but you're going to need to route that signal to the console, and then that console signal then has to be routed to the the Studer tape deck. So within Pro Tools, you kind of eliminate all this because you're enabled to process signals, and many of these very, very legendary outboard gear choices such as the LA2A, the 1176s, and other um, pieces of outboard equipment have actually been digitized. So companies will go out there and they will recreate the sonic characteristics of each of these pieces of equipment, and you can literally pull them up within Pro Tools as a plugin. So you can process your audio just as if you were recording it on, the $4,000 LA2A. Now, one could argue that it's not exactly the same, and I would agree with that, but it's very close and it sounds very good. And if you can only afford, say, two LA2As, which is going to cost you about 8 grand, or you can buy one plug-in and put an LA2A on 24 tracks. I mean, it's a pretty easy choice. And then again, you have a much smaller footprint. Instead of having two huge, you have a huge console, you have a huge patch bay with tons of cables going each in every direction, and then you have, tons of outboard gear. Now your studio is getting bigger and bigger. Your electricity bill is getting bigger and bigger. And so, within Pro Tools, you're able to have many of these, emulated pieces of equipment inside of your computer. So, again, it's a very, very small footprint, and it's much cheaper to maintain than a bunch of, you know, equipment from the 1960s and 1970s. It still has tubes, so it's really hot, and it's much, much easier to maintain. Okay, and finally, I'd like to demonstrate some of the signal processing capabilities within Pro Tools. So in this demo, it's a separate track, and I used, tons of different audio processing plugins. And if you can recognize there, although it has a slightly different name, the Waves Audio CLA2A um, is actually an emulation, obviously, of the Teletronics LA2A. And they do sound very, very good. You know, an audio engineer, someone that's been in the industry for a while, can obviously tell the difference, but, most people can't tell the difference. And then if you see the device right beneath the CLA2A, that's actually an um, SSL channel strip. So there you go. You have that, your $1 million console. You can literally make $1 million console within the box within Pro Tools. So here I'll give a quick demonstration of the different audio processing capabilities within Pro Tools. So in this demonstration, I'm going to play the chorus for a song I did a while ago, and you can see I have all these different signal processing tools all in the same chain over a chorus. You can see the CLA2A is an audio compressor, and it's getting about about 18 dB of gain reduction. I bypass it there so you can kind of hear the sound with and without. And then below you have the SSL channel strip. So this is literally the channel strip of that huge console I've spoke about numerous times during this presentation. And basically they mimic the sonic characteristics of the solid state logic. And as you can see, the solid state logic logo is actually there on that plugin, so they worked in collaboration with Waves to create this plugin, and it sounds very, very good as well, and I use it quite frequently. Then you have some other signal processing tools, such as just a standard equalizer there, multi-band equalizer. You can see I've pulled out some signals and raised a couple signals. And then on the far left, you have a reverb that's used to kind of create the illusion that it was recorded in, say, like a hall or something like that. And this is all done within the box within Pro Tools. So all these different signal processing tools are in the Pro Tools software package, and it's kind of modular as well, so you can add different tools, you can have less tools. So they do get pricey, but if you find a plugin that and you love, you can just buy that, and you can buy, a lot of the plugin companies allow you to buy just one plugin or two plugin, or you can buy their whole package, which can be thousands of dollars. But this is just to kind of demonstrate the signal processing capabilities of Pro Tools. So there you have it. And with that, I'd like to conclude my presentation. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to it, and have a great day.